Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, Model Museum, where I review every single Model 1, 2, and 3 arcade game in a retrospective fashion that is not a racing game because I did that retrospective last year. And if you can't tell already, we're going to be talking about Virtua Fighter 3 and Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle, both on the Model 3 arcade board. Virtua Fighter 3 was the first game ever released for this board, and it was such a huge step up from Model 2, which we have been talking about. And while this did get ported to the Dreamcast, that is not a bad port. In my opinion, the Model 3 original is still the best way to play. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It definitely helps us out. This is where I really got my start with Virtua Fighter. Yes, I played Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 in arcades, and yes, I had a copy for the Sega Saturn, but I imported a Japanese Dreamcast with two games, Sonic Adventure and Virtua Fighter 3. I played more Virtua Fighter 3 in the end than I did Sonic Adventure. I just kept coming back to it over and over again. And if you can't tell already, I am emulating this on the Supermodel emulator because it gives me full 16:9 widescreen support. There will be some black letterboxing bars here and there, just kind of how it works, but it is still my favorite way to play the game. But leave me a comment down below and tell me which Virtua Fighter is your favorite, because I really would be curious. I know not everyone grew up in the Dreamcast era. But what is on offer here, I think, is when Sega finally nailed the Virtua Fighter formula. A lot of that gravity moon jump has been reduced down, so you kind of jump almost like a normal human being, but you have full range of motion in and out of the screen in a full 3D screen space gameplay situation, and it just works. It's fast, it's fluid. Everything you want in a 3D fighting game is here. You even get elevation changes, which do take a little bit for your mind to get used to. If there's only one strike I would give against Virtua Fighter 3 compared to 2, is that some of the stages are less visually interesting than their Model 2 counterparts. Here on stage 2 against Shun, we have this gigantic floating platform going underneath a bridge. Here against Shun, we're just on a floating platform in the ocean. It is in no way, shape, or form an ugly situation to look at. I just wish that the stages were a little bit more dynamic like they were in Virtua Fighter 2. But honestly, a lot of that comes back in Virtua Fighter 4 moving forward, so it's just one of those things. It might not be my favorite. And of course, new game, you're going to get some new characters as well, and there's so many to choose from. You have your light, fast characters, and you have heavy characters here like Taka Arashi, sumo wrestler that I don't normally play with, but it does work for me. I love all those heavy strikes and the grapple situation, and you will see here again, as we fight up those stairs, being below your opponent can definitely be an advantage, because if they try to strike high, it's going to go over your head. If you're low, though, that can be a little bit of a disadvantage. But again, Virtua Fighter 3 is just such a spectacular game, and it really showed the power of the Model 3 and that real 3D chipset, which interestingly enough goes all the way back to the Apollo space program, and my father-in-law developed a camera to put on the moon back in the day. Weird little story, but it's a super fun one that I love to tell. If we move over here to Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle, you will see that we have the same stage, but it has a different background. They did just enough to update the game to make it look a little bit more visually distinct from the original release, while giving you that team battle aspect. It's basically Virtua Fighter meets King of Fighters, not in the gameplay perspective, but just in the 3-on-3 action. And it's just one of those things. It's a good pivot. If you're just getting a little bit bored with the standard game, you can go to 3-team battle. And don't forget, there are different camera modes in Virtua Fighter as well. You can go into a first-person mode, which is absolutely useless for actually playing the game, but it is a really fun and interesting visual look at what you could do. The only other game I know that does the first-person mode is Battle Trist on the 3DO M2, a very rare game that I've got a video on. I'll leave a link below. But if you know of another 3D fighting game that allows for the first-person perspective, let me know, because I'm always just looking for them out of curiosity. But again, as we move on here to the fourth stage, everything about the gameplay mechanics of Virtua Fighter 3 I think are spectacular and perfect. There really isn't anything I would change as far as the control setup, the overall engine, or the gameplay mechanics. This is as good as anything Tekken has ever done, and I do stand by that. And I do like the elevation changes, even if they do take a minute to get used to. It adds another layer into the game. But this also has one of my favorite Virtua Fighter soundtracks of all time, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds. I'll come back and tell you some more history.
Fight 2, ready, go!
Yeah, yeah! 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 Yeah!
Excellent!
Yeah! Gotta run home to Mom?
1, ready, go!
It's just really good music, and obviously contextually each soundtrack element matches the stage that it's in. We had that kind of Chinese themed out in the Asian garden, and now we have more of a hard rock soundtrack as we're fighting on this scaffolding. Don't forget, ring outs are still going to be a thing in Virtua Fighter, and I do think it's hilarious that he fell to his death, and for some reason this in particular stage seems to end in a lot of ring outs, at least when I'm playing. If I move over to a different playthrough here, you're going to see that I'm able to ring out twice. I don't know what it is, maybe it's just the shape because it is not a square, but it seems like 7 out of 10 of my matches here end in ring outs. Even when I win, I still manage to fall off, which I actually think is a pretty hilarious way to end a match. There's not much elevation change in this stage, only those girders, but that small form factor of where you're actually fighting does give you a little more challenge. I will say that it's still not the biggest roster. When we get to Virtua Fighter 4, you're going to get a lot more characters, but it is nice to have a concise set of players here. You're going to find somebody you really enjoy playing as. Normally, Lao is my main, but I decided just to play around and get some different characters here. It does seem in every single Virtua Fighter game that I play, I have a different character that I prefer, but I am curious who your preferred character is. Tell me down below. But this is just one of those games. When this came out in arcades, it was still the best looking thing around. We were still basically just getting close to the Dreamcast era. There may have been previews in magazines or rumors or whisperings of that actually coming, but stuff like PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, and Nintendo 64 is still what we had at home, and only stuff like Namco hardware could get close to rivaling Model 3. But all of these fluid effects here with the water just look amazing, and they look better here, in my opinion, than they do on Dreamcast. And if you move over to Team Battle again, you do get that different background, that I do actually like the darker color scape here. But that's the thing about Model 3. This was superior hardware to basically anything else that was on the market, and of course Sega brought Virtua Fighter 3 out to be the first game to show on the hardware. It was one of the most popular franchises, and they knew it was a great graphical showcase, because every single thing in this game that you see outside of textures is going to be made out of polygons. Whether it's the characters, the arenas, or the trains going through the background, everything has a polygon, and it is running at 60 frames a second perfectly. Now, of course, it looks much better on the Supermodel emulator, and that's the benefit of emulation, but even on an original board, it is great. One more taste of the soundtrack to it, because this is my favorite track, and I'll be right back. Just a great soundtrack. When we get to stage 7 here against Pi, this is one stage where you really need to deal with where you are actually standing, and you do have that ability to circle strafe around your opponent. Having the high ground here is just always a disadvantage, so it ends up being a little bit of a play to try to get underneath your opponent. That way you have that advantage, and it does actually add a nice layer of complexity to the game. But honestly, there's more than one way to win a match here, and it's just hilarious how much this looks like it hurts. And that's the thing about Virtua Fighter 3. All of these strikes are impactful, those ragdoll physics really work great, and hitting your back on the roof and then falling face first to what I would assume would be your death is just a really good look. But there's so much good to say about Virtua Fighter 3, and I readily admit that a lot of that is due to pure nostalgia. I was just in a time and place when I was a kid in high school when this game came out that I 100% fell in love with it. My friends and I would get together, we would play it, and I was for 8 months there the only person that owned a Dreamcast. I used all my summer job money to import one with some games, and then I very quickly found out on the North American release what region locking actually meant and had to buy another Dreamcast. But you'll see here on Takarashi's stage, there is no elevation, but if we move over to Lion's stage, there is a ton. And I do like that it's not in every single stage. They give you different looks at different mechanics, so you really do need to understand and read the situation quickly so that you have a better chance at victory, and that's what I really love about Virtua Fighter 3. The first game was a technical showcase that is still fun to play. The second game, another technical showcase that I still go back and play. But Virtua Fighter 3 is where I really do feel like Sega figured out the entire Virtua Fighter formula from start to finish. And of course it wouldn't be Virtua Fighter without a boss fight bonus with Doral here. And I was doing pretty well. You're going to see I win the first match here. But spoiler alert, it was not my day to win this one. And that's the thing though, you can win, you can lose, it doesn't matter. You're still going to see the credits when you get to this point. But Virtua Fighter 3 is just one of those games. I absolutely love it. I play it at least once a year. I come back to it time and time again. You can play it on original Model 3 arcade board, you can play it on Dreamcast, or you can play it on Super Model like I'm doing it here. However you play it though, if you've never done it, you owe it to me to do so, but tell me down below when you first played the game because I would be curious. Short of that, I have lost, we are done, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.